Good day, everyone. This is the feedback on your professional skills to F1. I'm going to go through the questions and just discuss some common errors in some areas that you needed to look out for when answering them. So the questions are here, but I'm going to use the assessment criteria and mark breakdown to go through the answers. And primarily this is because this is what you also should be using to go through your answers. So you can answer the questions, but you can almost mark your own work by going through the assessment criteria and mark breakdown. So for question 1.1, the question was use the self-awareness questionnaire profile, use the self-awareness profile and your interpretation and scoring to identify 3 areas that you most need to improve your self-awareness in. Reflect on yourself and your scores and really describe the areas in full. And this was the important part here. You really needed to describe those areas in full for 6 marks. So 3 areas, 2 marks each, 1 mark for giving the area and 1 mark for the full explanation. So these needed to be self-awareness areas. You couldn't just say something like, my weakness is my personality score, or my weakness is my aggressiveness score, because what aspect of your personality score do you find problematic, and your aggressiveness score, is it high or low? What's the issue here? So you needed to really interpret your score so that they made direct sense to you about your personality. And then you had to explain that connection to your marker in your answer. So for example, self-awareness questionnaire 3, if that showed that you had a low assertiveness score, here's how you could interpret that. So this could indicate that you are a very passive person, which means that you often allow yourself to get walked over. So for you specifically, not necessarily for others, but for you, this means that you also have a low opinion of yourself and don't believe in your own value. You believe that to win people over, you have to please them, rather than actually doing what feels right to you. So what this means in turn is that you don't confront problems because you hate confrontation. So as you've developed there on the score in self-awareness question 3, you've gotten to the root of your score and you now know yourself a lot better. So saying something like, I'm too passive, wouldn't have gotten you full marks. Because you haven't developed on this in every single area. You had to develop on this so that we understand exactly why that low passiveness score is a problem in your life. And this would have helped you answer questions 1.1 to 1.6 better, because if you had a fully fleshed out answer, you'd be able to develop on them later on. So what you would have to do is you would have had to do this 3 times for each area. So each area would have gotten you 2 marks. You had to do this 3 times. And what you could really do, or how you could answer this, is you have to answer each one separately. So you could have labeled your answers 1.1 A, B, and C, where A, B, and C are each of your self-awareness areas. And then 1.2 A, B, and C, all the way to 1.6 A, B, and C, so that you know you are answering each portion of the question individually. All right. And just a note on this question, being too nice and not wanting to hurt people is not a self-awareness area. What you're doing here is you're trying to avoid the question and you're not introspecting at a deep enough level. If you answer this way, or if you feel like this is you, I would definitely urge you to do some further research on healthy boundaries in your life. All right, question 1.2. This question asked you to discuss the reason and the payoff for each area that you have identified above in 1.1. So again, you could have answered this 1.2, A, B, and C for each area that you identified. So this meant that you had to state why you wanted to improve on each area, and then also on top of that, state the payoff for each one. So for the above example that I mentioned, you could have said something like, the reason that you wanted to improve on the self-awareness area is so that you could have your voice heard, even when people don't agree with you initially. You know that you have good ideas and you want the opportunity to express them to other people. So that is why you want to improve on this area, and then state your payoff. The payoff would be that you would lose your fear of confrontation and are able to stand up for yourself in small scenarios like disagreeing with your friends during group work, or in bigger things like a big conflict situation at work. That would be your payoff. And you would have to do this 3 times. So for each self-awareness area, you would have to discuss the reason that you wanted to improve on that and the payoff. Question 1.3, you needed to discuss the obstacles that you feel were standing in or are standing in your way. Remember that many things that you think are obstacles are not actually real, they're imagined. Don't make money your main excuse. Yes, it's a really huge barrier, but it isn't a barrier to knowledge and self-growth. At very least, you have your textbook. And a lot of you pointed that out. This textbook is full of questionnaires and full of ideas for exercises that you can do to improve your self-awareness, to improve your emotional intelligence. Exercises like journaling, blogging, redoing these questionnaires every couple of months is really going to be helpful for you. And this is entirely free. You have this textbook already. If you have internet access, which I understand does cost money, you can gain access to lots of different free learning resources. You can also gain access to free online counseling, and you can also do research about your self-awareness areas that you're struggling with and find lots of exercises to help you. BMH also offers free counseling. You can make use of this now while you are still a student. It's really valuable. It's not only for, if you are struggling emotionally, but it's also to help you with a lot of the topics that we cover in this course. Like time management, like managing your emotions and all of those kinds of things. Counseling can help you with that. An example of a self-awareness area, or an obstacle rather, for the self-awareness area that we've been using is that you feel like you don't have a good support structure to help you confront your fear of confrontation. If you confront people, you're afraid that you lose them, and if you lose those people, you feel like you're going to lose the support structure that you do have. That could be an obstacle that you feel could stand in your way. All right, 1.4, you had to state the specific things that you would do to enhance your self-awareness. Any logical and in-depth answer would have been accepted, but the answers that we were looking for were reflection, journaling, blogging, self-performance appraisals, and self-assessment inventories. And these answers could have been found on pages 15 to 16 in your textbook. Just mentioning them obviously was not enough. You'd have to apply each action to each self-awareness area that you mentioned. So, you had to not just say write a journal. You would have had to say, a format that you would write it in, what you would write in it, what your timeline is, what you would how long you would want to keep it for. Would it be personal? Would it be posted? Check your textbook for these answers and be specific. In question 1.5, you had to set a realistic timeline for each area you identified. It had to be realistic and show reflection and thought in the timing of your actions. So you might decide that you wanted to tackle one area a month, but you needed to explain exactly why you chose this. This might not really work for your self-awareness area. If you say something like, I'll tackle these after coronavirus is over, it's a bit of a defeatist answer, really. We need to be adaptable, and adaptability is something that has really come to the fore during this lockdown period. Yes, this is an incredibly scary time where we all don't really know what's going on, but you thrive if you adapt now. You have to make a plan. Many of you also thought you'd get extra marks for commitment and saying things like, I'll work on each area for 2 hours a day, every day. This is unrealistic. You're not going to be spending 6 hours every single day to work on this. So you had to look at your life, look at what would work for you, and put down a realistic timeline. Question 1.6 asked you to state how you would measure success in each of these areas. And again, this had to be very specific. So you had to state what success would look like and when you would measure the success. So that is pretty open-ended, because if you've got a fear of confrontation, this might actually take up to a year for you to deal with, and that is perfectly fine. But you had to make sure that you did actually give us a timeline. So for the answer I've been using throughout, I'd say something like, I would measure my success when I know whether it is appropriate to speak up and when it is fine to keep quiet on an issue. When I'm faced with confrontation, if I leave the situation having felt like I was polite but firm and I was proud of my actions, then I will know that I am successful. I will journal about this on the first day of every month to monitor my success, and I will readjust my methods if necessary. All right, moving on to question 2. This is your CV. CVs are incredibly important, as we all know, and I encourage you to use this rubric all the way down to go through your CV. We give you this rubric so that you know what we are looking for. So go through, make sure that you've checked all of the boxes here. But these are some of the main issues that came up. So first of all is work experience. Absolutely no question. You have to have this. No arguments. This is non-negotiable. It doesn't have to be in some high-paying media firm. It can be waitering. It can be working in a shop. It can be really doing anything. And in these times, it can be something like doing freelance online work for a number of different positions. An example of this could be to offer to do social media for a small company in your community that has absolutely no presence online. This is your work experience. There's no real excuse for no work experience at your age. And it also means that when you do go to apply for a job, your first employer is not going to want to take a chance on you because you have no history. On the flip side of this, if you started your own company, that's amazing. That's great. You should definitely put that in there. However, you are not the CEO of this company. Don't elevate your job title, because the only people impressed by this are people who are not in a position to give you a job. If you're unsure what I mean by this, please go and research what it means to be a CEO. A founder is what you actually are, and this sounds far more impressive because people know how tough it is to start a job or start a company, these days especially. Your LinkedIn URL had to be provided, not just your name. I wouldn't be able to find you then. Next is attention to detail, spelling, grammar, punctuation, tone. These are all things within your control. It's really easy to do. You can ensure that people will have a good impression of you if you don't make any careless errors. So you want to make sure that you do this. If something is underlined as an error on Word, on your phone or on your PC, always check it. Next is that your CV really does need to look nice. It needs to be pleasing to the eye. This is why I recommended using Canva or Google Docs to create it. You didn't lose marks if you didn't use these, but these templates help you to structure your CV nicely. If you would like a Zoom class on this, please get in touch with me, send me an email, and we can organize one. And finally, with your CVs, please get in touch with me. Send me your CV at any stage, even next year. Introduce yourself to me again and say, please check my CV, because this is your first impression on the job hunt. Okay, on to question 3. 3.1, explain what emotional intelligence is. Mostly you all got this right. You needed to take the quote from your textbook and reference it, or take another suitable quote off the internet and reference that too. 3.2, a suitable scenario is described or provided. Your situation needed to be described in full, and this is quite important to practice as you need to do this in your S1. So practice it now. You'd need to name each person, describe their actions, and explain exactly what they said and did. You couldn't be vague, and you couldn't give a for instance. And then 3.3, recommendations are made that are relevant to the situation and keep the 4 components of EI into account. You'd need to evaluate the situation using the 4 elements of EI, which are found on pages 64 to 65. They include self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and relationship management. To get the full marks, you would have had to list these areas and then apply them directly to your situation while making recommendations on how all parties, which included you, could have improved your behavior. Many people gave answers that painted the other person in the situation as having low emotional intelligence, when it was quite clear that both parties lacked emotional intelligence as much as the other. And then finally, you would have had to give a working link of the video or podcast so that I could access it on YouTube. If I couldn't access this link and you didn't give a transcript of what happened in this link, I couldn't mark your assessment. So it's a good piece of advice to always include transcripts, to always include evidence in your assessment that the questions have been done. Because if there's something wrong with the link for whatever reason, or if it doesn't upload, or whatever the problem is, I have access to the information that's covered in the question. So that's everything about your Professional Skills 2 F1. As always, get in touch with me if you have any questions, and I will do my best to help you. Good luck with your S1, and I will speak to you all soon. Cheers!